Hey y'all, in today's episode, I'm going to show you how to make this delicious brown butter coffee cake. It is filled with a rich and delicious cinnamon streusel. And to enhance the flavor, I'm browning the butter. That's what's coming up today in the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Stay tuned. Now, the first thing we're going to do with this recipe is we're going to brown the butter. And browning the butter gives you way more flavor. You're just toasting the butter solids. That's essentially what you're doing. So I have here a skillet. I always suggest that you use a stainless steel skillet whenever you're browning butter so you can see what's happening with the butter. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my butter. Add in my 2 sticks of butter and just start to melt your butter. You don't really want to walk away from butter while it's browning, by the way. That's not, a great idea because it can have a tendency to pop on you. Now, I'm using 2 sticks of butter, but if I was going to do this with creaming butter, so I'm just going to use softened butter, I would only use 1.5 sticks of butter. The reason why you use more butter when you are browning butter is because if you weigh it out, you end up with less butter once you brown it because you are essentially removing the water out of the butter. So you're cooking off the water. So as you see the steam goes up, that's exactly what's happening. The water in the butter is evaporating. So that water does, it counts in the weight of the butter, but when you remove it, you actually end up with less butter. So if a recipe calls for 2 sticks of butter, if you're going to brown it, you might need 2.5 sticks of butter just to make it for that lost volume that you would have. So keep it stirred. And the thing about browning butter is you listen to it. And you hear it start to pop. To keep it from popping on you, keep it moving. And another thing, your butter solids are sinking to the bottom of your skillet. So in order to keep them from burning at the bottom of the skillet, you kind of do want to keep the butter moving. Just keep it moving. This ensures that it browns nice and evenly. And I learned this tip from Miss Mary Berry herself. Mary Berry says, browning butter is kind of like children. When it gets quiet, it's doing something you need to pay attention. So right now, as you can hear, it's very noisy. But as it begins to brown, it'll start to get very quiet. Just listen. So noisy. Have a heat-proof ready bowl right next to you, because as soon as it browns, you want to remove it from the heat and transfer it to another container that stops it from, it doesn't keep cooking and eventually burn. So now I notice that my butter is starting to foam. And when it starts to foam, it's starting to brown. So go ahead and turn off the heat. Just go ahead and kill the heat. And you see how it's getting quiet and it's looking all nice and toasty. Very nice. So now it's time for me to pour this into my heat-proof bowl. So I'm just going to pour it right in. There we are. And you can see all those little nice butter solids in the bottom. You want all of that. Don't leave any of it in the bottom. Scrape it all out. And we have, oh, that's hot. We have browned butter. And so you can see it's like a really, really nice brown. Now this is screaming hot, so just be careful. I'm gonna set that aside and let that cool before I proceed with my recipe. Okay, so the butter has cooled nicely. And as you see, it looks like this very, very weird, it looks like a weird glue or something. But no, it is just butter that is, brown butter that is starting to re-solidify. That's all it is. If you let it cool long enough. When it's cooling like this, you can put it in a pan of cold water, which is what I did. Let it hurry up and cool it down. But you want to kind of stir it because that keeps all of those nice little brown bits evenly distributed instead of just sinking down to the bottom. Now I'm going to take half of this mixture and I'm going to add it to my bowl that I will be creaming my ingredients in. So I'm going to take half of it and add it to the bowl, but I'm going to reserve some of it for the topping. So as you can see here, I've got a good bit of it in here, and that's about, I want about 2 tablespoons for the topping. That's what I'm aiming for. So I reserve just a little bit in the bowl. So set this aside, because first things first, I'm going to make the streusel topping for my streusel, my brown butter streusel. And I, to be perfectly honest, didn't want to dirty up another bowl. So since I already got the butter in here, I just leave it in here, mix everything in here at once. Now I am going to actually use a spatula to scrape it down, but I'm going to use a whisk to mix it together. So into this, I'm going to add some brown sugar. And I'll leave the recipe for the cake in the description box below, the full recipe, so no worries. So I have some brown sugar. I'm going to add in some cinnamon, good amount of cinnamon, because this is a streusel topping, and cinnamon is always a good idea. I'm going to add in some flour, and I'm going to add in a bit of vanilla extract. That vanilla smells good. And be generous with the vanilla extract, because yeah, that's a lot, but you want this to pick up some really, really bold flavors. Now, actually, I think I'm going to do this the way I always make a streusel. Unless I'm making a giant batch of it, then I make it in my food processor. But if I'm making a small amount, I do it by hand and not the whisk, actually. So just take your fingers and just mix all of this together, just like that. Just mix it up with your fingers. What you're looking for is a crumbly mixture. It shouldn't be too wet and it shouldn't be too dry. There we are. You want it to be like a nice sandy mixture like that, and you should be able to pick it up with your hands. Essentially, what you've just made is like a very crumbly cookie dough. That is all this is a mock cookie dough. To be, you know, that's essentially what it is. So just like shortbread cookie, you just added more flour and a little less butter and mixed it up. That's all. Okay, so my crumble mixture is done. I'm going to set that aside and just leave it until I need it. Now I'm going to move on to the sour cream cake batter. So here I have the softened, cooled browned butter, which doesn't look like it doesn't look like much at this point, but we're gonna add a little something to it. So I'm adding in some sugar, and as I say, no worries, the recipe will be in the description below. I'm going to add in the sugar and just start to cream the sugar and the butter together, just like that. You can use a hand mixer for this, but I like to use hand mixing by hand without machine when I have the opportunity, especially if you're doing a small amount like this. Now I'm going to pause and add in my vanilla extract, and I'm going to use about 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. This is a small cake, and outside of the cinnamon, there's not any other flavorings, so you want to make sure you just add in enough flavor. By the way, my oven is preheated to 350 degrees. Now we need some eggs. I will be using eggs, so I'm going to add 2 eggs in, and I'm just going to add it 1 egg in at a time. Eggs are at room temperature. So 1 egg in at a time. And then egg number 2. There she goes. And just scrape down the sides of the pan. This just makes sure you don't have a whole lot of batter that's running away to the edge of the pan. Now it's time to add in the sour cream and the flour. By the way, did I say sour cream? I meant yogurt. I'm using Greek yogurt. You can use sour cream for this. And between the Greek yogurt and the sour cream, you won't notice a lot of difference. But the reason why I'm using Greek yogurt is, number one, I'm a yogurt person. I'm not a huge sour cream person. And reason number two, Greek yogurt has health properties that sour cream does not, because it has all of that healthy probiotics in it that sour cream doesn't have. But if you want to use sour cream, you can. But full disclosure, I am using my own homemade Greek yogurt, and I have a masterclass Greek yogurt video, and I also have a short video where I show you how to make it in a speedy version, and I show you how to make a more detailed version. I will leave a link in the iCards for both of those videos, so check them out. That way you can make your own homemade yogurt. So I am going to start by adding in my flour. I'm going to add in half of the flour, and I also have here baking powder, baking soda, and some salt. I'm going to add that in right in with those, and then just whisk. This might try to go everywhere. It's going to, but just give it a good slow mix. Just as if you were doing this in a mixture where you add in some of your dry and then you add in some of your wet. So, all right, so whisk in the Greek yogurt. And then before you incorporate all that in, go ahead and add in the remainder of your flour. Now, if you notice, this batter for a cake is fairly thick. And if you were making any other kind of cake, you would add some buttermilk or some milk or an extra egg or something in here to make this batter a little bit thinner. But I don't want to do that. And the reason why my batter is a little thicker than most, and that's enough for the mixing, I don't need to mix anymore because I don't want to overmix it. The reason why the batter is thicker than most is because I'm adding a streusel topping to this cake. And I have learned this over the years of making coffee cakes. By trial and error, I have learned if your batter is thinner, your streusel sinks to the bottom, and then you look at your beautiful cake and all that pretty streusel you sprinkled on top, it just sunk to the bottom and it disappeared. That's because your cake batter itself is too loose and it's not holding. It's just like if you're making a peach cobbler and you put the peaches on top. The peaches are heavier than the batter and therefore they sink to the bottom. So in order to avoid that, you want to make a cake, if you're putting a streusel on it, you want to make a cake with the batter a little bit thicker. So you can see how this is thick, and that's just what we want. So now I'm going to straighten up, clean up, and get my pan ready for my cake mix. Here I have a 8-inch springform pan, and this is kind with the loose that you can remove the bottom from. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because since this cake has a streusel topping to it, in order to get out of a regular cake pan, unless you were going to cut the cake right in the pan and then serve it, that's perfectly fine if you want to. But if you wanted to remove it out of the pan, sometimes, unless the cake is very cold, when you tip it out, you can lose some crumble topping. And I've done that. I do that quite a bit when I'm making a big sheet pan cake. You can lose a little crumble topping. So I'm just going to use a springform pan. These are also known as cheesecake pans. Here in the States, we use them mainly for cheesecake. So I'm just going to spray it lightly with some regular baking spray. And then I'm going to take a piece of parchment paper and I'm just going to cut it right about the size or a little wider than my cake pan itself. And I'm going to use this to line my pan. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just tuck it in there like that. Just make sure you get the air out so it doesn't bubble. And then I need one more piece that's not quite so long. Okay, but longer than that. Okay. Cut another piece. This is a good idea. And my cousin, who is a professional cake baker, she does this with all of her cakes. Just because it ensures that you never have to worry about a cake overflowing your pan. So there, just tuck that in like that. And then I'm going to take one more piece and put it in the bottom. And the idea is just to put something in the bottom of it so it doesn't, the cake easily releases out of the pan. And then I'm going to take my baking spray with flour and I'm just going to lightly spray the parchment paper. Now I'm just going to spoon half of my batter into my pan. I'm just going to dollop it in there, just like that. And then I'm going to use the offset spatula to kind of spread it out. Spread it all around on the inside, like that. And then we take the streusel mixture. It smells so good. Oh, wow. And just sprinkle in the streusel mixture right on top. So half goes on now, and then half goes on after we add the rest of our cake batter. And be generous. You want to use all of this, by the way, so be generous. Okay, and then the remaining cake batter goes right on. Over she goes. Okay, so just spread this out on top. This could be a little tricky because your crumbs will try to snatch the cake up, but just start spreading like that. You take your topping, the remaining topping, and then sprinkle it right on top, just like that. Sprinkle it all right on top. All right, and the last of it, over she goes. Okay, that looks good. Now, put this in the oven and let it bake. It's gonna take anywhere from 30 minutes to 40 minutes. You know it's done when you can stick a cake tester in it and the cake tester comes out clean. Don't overbake it, but don't underbake it. Keep an eye on it. Okay, the cake is out of the oven and it is nice and cooled. So now I just need to remove it from the springform pan. And the best way to do that is just, I have here my buttermilk because we're going to make a buttermilk glaze for it, but just unsnap it and just loosen it up just a little bit, just using your hands. You also can stretch this, but there you are, by just expanding the ring, and that'll loosen it from the pan very nicely. Okay, and then as you can see, our parchment sling did its job. It kept it so it didn't stick to the sides. And then I just need to remove this. Take that off, set that aside, and I just need to remove the cake from. Before I do that, I'm going to grab my my cake plate. I'm just going to take a offset spatula and just kind of loosen it up around the edges just a little bit. There we are. Okay, now just take the large spatula and just kind of angle it and slip it underneath. You'll know it when it, there you go, slip it underneath. And just transfer it to, and it stuck a tiny bit, but that's the bottom and that's fine with me. I mean, sometimes they will stick a tiny bit. You can avoid that by simply just putting a little piece of parchment, round parchment underneath, and it'll come out easy that way. But as you can see, you can totally use those springform pans to bake in and not just a cheesecake. So now I'm going to set this aside and get to work on my glaze. So to make my buttermilk glaze, here I have some powdered sugar, and I'm going to use about a half a cup of powdered sugar. The glaze doesn't need to be super heavy. And it's just a nice little topping that helps to keep the cake moist too. I'm also going to add in a little bit of almond extract. You can use vanilla extract if you want to, but I'm just going to use a little bit of almond extract. And then I've got my buttermilk, and you don't need a lot of buttermilk, just enough to kind of loosen it up. So just start off with about a tablespoon or so. And then just give it a nice whisk. My powdered sugar, as usual, is a little bit lumpy, but you can sieve it to get the lumps out. But as you mix, the lumps will disappear. And before I keep whisking like mad, I'm going to check on the consistency. Yeah, the consistency is perfect. That's about 1.5 tablespoons of buttermilk. Okay, see? All my lumps are gone. Nice and smooth. Okay, so now it's time to drizzle this glaze onto the cake. Now, the baker in me tells me to use a piping bag to carefully drizzle this onto the cake. And that is what I would normally do. I'm going to be honest. And I'm itching to go get my piping bag. But to just make it a little less fussy sometimes, I'm just going to drizzle it on freehand. But I have to admit, I am a bigger fan of the piping bag. So it's easier to control the glaze when you use a piping bag. To me, this is more helter-skelter, higgledy-piggledy, all over the placey. You can also pour it too. Okay, I need to stop. I need to stop. And there it is. Oh, wow. It looks so good. And it smells so good too. Oh, wow. I cannot wait to tuck into this and have a slice. Because contrary to what you may think about a baker's household, we actually don't get to eat a lot of sweets around here. So when I do get some sweets, I'm like, I can't wait to have a piece. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video on this delicious coffee cake. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and the good Lord willing, I will see you again right here in my kitchen with another video. Take care, y'all. Bye.
Tomorrow the 6th day, right?
Yes, sir.
What you're going to do is you're running out the house and you're going to have regular skate.